Welcome to the DevReady Podcast. Today we have Joana Inch joining us from Hat Media, and also just recently started out the SaaS Accelerator with Stuart Marshall, who we interviewed. I think it was episode 7 off the top of my mind, I believe it was. Joana, thanks for joining us.
Thank you. Happy to be here. Thanks for having me.
So, Joanna, we're here to talk a little bit about marketing, and especially within that SaaS B2B play. Tell us a bit about your background, how you originally got involved in marketing, and how Hat Media came about.
Yeah, happy to. So I originally started out in, oh God, I'm going to show my age here, but over 15 years ago in TV marketing and radio and cinema. And very quickly I caught on to digital and it just became a passion of mine. I
Okay.
kind of saw the future of it. It was super exciting dealing with all these innovations and tools that kept coming out. So I launched my own company called Hat Media over 10 years ago. And very much we specialized in Google AdWords, SEO. We built websites and we focused on messages as well for clients. Now, keep in mind, this was back in the day before Facebook wasn't even alive. So there was
Okay.
so little out at that time to
hmm
do with
hmm
marketing. Um, and since then, it's so much has come out. It's just been so exciting. We've caught on to Facebook. You have
hmm
LinkedIn. You
Yes.
have YouTube. You have marketing automation platforms such as
hmm
HubSpot,
hmm
Marketo, Eloqua, Salesforce, Pardot. There's just so much out right now, and so much SaaS as well around things like building marketing funnels,
Yes.
um, pay-per-click advertising, programmatic. It's just really come a long way. So what we did probably about in 2016 or 17, we actually
hmm
niched to just be helping technology and software clients.
hmm
Um, One of the clients that we onboarded at that time was Lenovo. So we did quite a lot of content marketing for them with
Okay.
really good
Nice.
results.
hmm
And it's just helped us learn a lot of findings and to implement for all of our future SaaS clients as well. So there's definitely some unique things in terms of digital marketing for the SaaS and tech space that one can implement to have an effective campaign.
Okay. So in terms of Lenovo, so what did you do with them? Was it around hardware, software space? What was it in particular for Lenovo, generally a hardware
Yeah.
provider?
Yeah, no, definitely the hardware.
hmm Yep. hmm
Definitely hardware, and it was in the
Uh-huh.
B2B space, so
Okay.
definitely selling across the
Yes.
APAC region,
Yes.
trying to get
hmm
more businesses
hmm
to buy, yeah, laptops, the Lenovo
Laptops. Yep.
laptops.
Get it. So.
What we did was
hmm
at the time, this was actually quite controversial, and it was really hard to kind of get it across, but it's just had such good results that you're kind of
hmm
seeing a lot of brands picking this up now and doing it. What we did was we built a brand agnostic website and it was called techrevolution.asia. And if you go
Okay.
there now, you'll see
Yeah.
over 400 articles
Uh-huh.
just around digital transformation, AI,
Yes.
machine learning, all those
hmm
types of topics.
hmm
We also got influencers to write for us for that particular website, the likes
Interesting.
of Bernard Ma and Ray
Uh-huh.
Wang. Also
Yeah.
Brian Solis, who's really influential in the digital transformation space.
hmm
He's got a really good following on Twitter. So
Yeah.
yeah, we did that for Lenovo, a little bit for Intel as well. And
Yes.
what we did was we actually got the sales teams that were talking to the customers to be the authors of these articles. And what ended up happening is that the conversations just became so much easier because
hmm
all these potential customers had read all this content from them.
hmm
And they pictured them as thought leaders in the space. And one statistic that we know about thought leadership is that 60% more likely to employ a thought leader in the space than not. So content
That's a big
marketing really
stat that I
does
didn't know
work.
about. Yeah, interesting stat.
Yeah.
Yeah, huge, 60%. Yeah, that's massive. So, in terms of content marketing, is that the angle that you generally push people towards to think about to start understanding and educating their customers?
Absolutely, because when you think about it, in this day and age, people will do their own research.
Hmm.
Gone are the days where you'd go to the shop like JB Hi-Fi and start asking, which
Mm.
laptop should I buy? What are the features on
Hmm.
that one? More than likely, you already have that data, you already know, and you're really just going to the store to buy it. So when you're doing your research online, you stumble upon a lot of blogging or thought leadership articles.
Hmm.
So really, that's where you need to focus on to capture your customers. You need to focus on adding value to them and giving them information that they're seeking, solving their
Yes.
pain points or their questions, and just subtly having your brand in the background.
Hmm.
They do remember it. They do remember who helped them with their pain points and their questions. So they will end up buying from that brand just because of the value that was added.
Yeah, no, very good. So this was in 2017. You started getting more into tech space. So, and that's evolved
Yeah.
obviously into helping some SaaS businesses as well. So, what are some of the challenges that you find with technology businesses that are looking to sell products online? And there's a sea of content out there, and people trying to just push their own product out there. What are you finding some of the limitations are within these businesses, and how can marketing assist them?
Yeah, there's actually quite a few when it comes to SaaS. I mean, if you think
Hmm.
about not just the startups, but also the
Yes.
established companies,
Uh-huh.
what I find is a lot of them have a problem with the niche. They more
Hmm.
than likely don't have a niche, and they're trying to be too many things to too many people, which means the
Mm.
message is just not really getting out there to the right people, or it
Okay.
doesn't resonate with their target audience. And with startups, it's very common that they do this because when they first start out, obviously they'll take any clients that they can or any customers
Hmm.
that they can. So,
Yep.
um, but then also when they evolve, it's very likely that as a brand they've changed.
Hmm.
Just because of their journeys, and what they really need to do is go back and redo ask all those questions again on who is our target market, who is our niche, and therefore how do we need to amend our messaging on our website, on all our advertising assets and all of our content marketing so we can resonate better with that target audience, and then
Hmm.
really just create a buyer journey around that audience and those messagings. And that's probably the best way to scale. Because what I find is if you don't have your niche right, you more than likely hit a plateau and you're not really scaling or getting any more customers, just because you are dividing your focus, so to speak,
Yes.
when you're trying to
Hmm.
target too many different audience types. So that's one issue I've noticed with SaaS.
Okay. And then from a marketing message, clearly it's more watered down if you're not niching. So I imagine that's one of the challenges that people find when they're pushing out marketing. That's very generic in that case if it's not niched.
You're probably not hitting anyone's specific pain point.
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. Very generic.
You mentioned something there a little bit around the buyer journey. Can you describe what you mean
Hmm.
by buyer's journey? Is that the point where they
Yeah.
begin the education journey of what they are looking for and then right through to purchase? What do you mean by buyer's journey?
What I mean is the journey that they take in order to purchase your product, but then
Hmm.
also post journey is once they become a customer, which is where a lot of
Yes.
companies forget about them. So if you think of the buyer journey at the awareness phase, which is the first step, and that's
Hmm.
really when they become aware of your messages and your content and your brand. What does the journey look like there? What touch points have they used to find you? What is the messaging that they're reading? What pain points are you solving for them at that awareness stage? And then obviously, you then end up picking up something like an email address or contact details from them. So you
Hmm.
end up putting them in your marketing funnel and just taking them further down the journey, or you're likely picked up their cookie and you're remarketing to them.
Yes.
And that's really when they enter the consideration phase of the journey. So they're already aware of the brand, they're aware of the pain points that have been presented to them. The next step really is just deciding that maybe you're the person to solve them instead of a competitor.
Hmm. Okay.
And then at the decision phase, really, of the journey, and with B2B, that journey takes anywhere between 6 to 24 months. And it's really just ongoing content and value that you have to provide to your customers. You have to make sure that at every touch point, you're answering their questions, and you're putting your brand, in a high spot in their minds as well.
Mm.
And then once they've become a customer, I think it's really important, especially for SaaS companies, to just provide ongoing support.
Hmm.
A lot of them don't, and as you know, a lot of customers do have issues with software. And one thing that's really frustrating is if they can't get, through to the call center or someone or any kind of documentation where they can work out how to use the software. So they end up churning. So what we find with a lot of SaaS companies that are not very focused on their customers is they have a really high churn rate, because they likely adopt the software, but then they're not really sure how to use those features.
Hmm.
They're having, glitches or issues with the software that are not getting fixed. So they end up just not using it and then not renewing.
And that's the last thing you want in business.
Yeah, exactly.
So is that the marketing needs to sort of not continue for existing customers, not just the acquisition state?
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. You can still continue to nurture your existing customers. They actually become your biggest advocates. They spread the word. It really helps because you end up building customer success stories around those specific customers. And if you have focused on niching and you've nailed your niche, then what you have is a whole bunch of customer success stories that you can then repurpose to other people in the same industries or with the same pain points and job titles. So it's much easier to grow and onboard customers when you have that type of content at your fingertips.
Mm. In terms of our thinking, just taking it back to our understanding from a content marketing perspective is, the more you can share and help that buyer as they're going through that journey, the better. And if you know, if just I think taking that buyer out of the conversation for me anyway, it's more about how are we helping serve people in the marketplace to get better results. If you can start from that point of view, I find that quite an interesting place to look at it and not consider them as you're not selling anything, you're just trying to educate. And I think people step into that frame of reference, it can be a little bit easier to build content then. How do you find when working with customers, educating them on the fact of, all right, this is what the market needs, wants, and desires, but they're still happy just to go about putting their products and this sell to customers? What are some of the challenges that you might find in this space?
Yeah, I definitely find that a lot of clients who
Hmm.
are kind of not on board with content marketing as much feel
Yes.
that they need to be pushing their product, but not
Hmm.
so much the product. They also feel like the message on the website needs to talk about the features of the software, as an example,
Okay.
and
Hmm.
just solve those external problems, so to speak. And what we find in marketing is, just convincing them to focus on solving internal problems for their customers, which is really the type of problems that keep them up at night.
Okay.
So it's
Hmm.
it's not really the software or the features that are going to sell the product. It's how you're going to solve their pain points, and really just
Hmm.
doing some research around discovering what their pain points are can be challenging with some clients.
Hmm.
Um, which is why we tend to do a whole buyer persona workshop where we ask really difficult questions. It's actually quite a painful process, but what comes out at the end is just
Yeah.
really good info around, well, who are your
Yep.
customers, and
Hmm.
what problems do you need to solve, and therefore this is how you need to amend your message. You need to focus on your internal problems. Just to give you an example of what I
Hmm.
mean by external and internal problems,
Yes.
right now, for example, an external problem could be, well, I need a car. I need
Hmm.
to buy a car. That's the external problem. I don't have a car. But the internal problem is, well, I need mobility. I need to be able to get around. I need that freedom of, traveling. There's one really good website that I keep mentioning as well on my marketing automation events and
Hmm.
webinars. They're basically a small business accounting firm.
Okay.
And so the external problems that they would be solving is, we help you with your cash flow and we help you save on tax. But that's not
Hmm.
really what help keeps their target audience up at night, and their target audience is small business owners. But if you look at their website, the message on their website is really good. It focuses on internal problems because it's all about, we help you make more time for your family, and we help you focus on your business. And it's really those internal problems that allow them to be so successful, because it really does resonate with their target audience, if that makes sense.
It does. So from a content perspective, and if you're pushing out content, would you generally want to focus more on the internal problems that you're attempting to solve, or is it more the technical side? What does a SaaS business or a technical business out there do to produce content? What should be their drivers?
Luckily, there's a lot of tools out there
Hmm.
that help SaaS businesses determine, what their customers are actually searching on Google, as an example.
Yes. Hmm.
There's websites like Answer the Public, for example, that can tell
Hmm.
you just around your keyword or your key product, what are people actually asking? What are they searching for in Google?
Hmm.
And you'll see quite a lot of searches coming out of that. So that's really a good platform to go and see, what kind of content should I be writing that people are already searching for. And therefore, it would help my business to be optimized for these types of searches. Um, and what you'll notice is a lot of the searches in this day and age are conversational searches. They're not the
Uh-huh.
way we used to search 10 years ago, which was just, one, two, or maybe three keywords.
Hmm.
Now we're very much searching the way we speak to our friends. And a lot of us are using voice search as well, and that's growing year on year on. So I think not just SaaS companies, but any
Hmm.
companies, when they're writing content, they need to keep in mind that the topics or the titles they need to write about, one, they solve a pain point, but two, they're conversational, and it's very much how do I or how can I, instead of just your main keywords.
Yeah. So
It's
not.
very question driven and
Mm,
answer
Yeah, very
oriented when you're
question
doing Google
driven.
search results as well.
mhm. Yeah. So the Answer the Public
Absolutely. And
is quite a good tool in terms of, yeah. I think if anyone wants to check it out, Answer the Public, we've used it a little bit in our content strategies. But yeah, you put in a keyword and it might be um, great, great. I don't know. It might be books, something about books, and then people might say, "What's some?" And the question might people ask, "What's a great book to read in this area?" And you'll get certain questions, and you can just write a blog article and answer those questions that people are looking to solve and problems are going to solve, and that's really cool piece of technology that
Yeah,
and
the
quite
problem
a
comes
significant.
down to
Yeah,
finding the right question or the right keywords.
correct.
So it probably comes down
Yeah.
to being that niche, Joanna, you mentioned earlier, and if you're not understanding that, then you won't be able to ask the right
mhm.
question or formulate the right content.
Hmm.
Yeah, absolutely spot on.
So now you're obviously an avid fan of content marketing and content strategy.
Mhm.
You've got a niche. We help assess. You mentioned something about personas and buyer personas. What are some of
Yeah.
those tough questions you might ask a client around how to actually understand their buyer personas, what their pain points are?
Yeah. Yeah, like I said, it's a very painful process, and it goes for hours, sometimes half a day of just
Nice.
questions,
Yep.
relentless questions on who your buyer personas actually are. We ask
Yeah.
not just job related questions like what is their job role, and
Uh-huh.
what company do they work for, and what's their career experience, but also what is their day to day, and what challenges do they face in their work environment, and who do they report to, as well as psychological questions. So, just as an example, what do they do outside of work? What social media platforms do they visit? How do they consume content?
Mhm.
Is it ebooks? Is it webinars? Is it podcasts that they prefer? Also, are they family people? Are they young? Are they older? Kind of demographic as well really plays a role in
Mhm.
figuring out who this avatar is, and then therefore how do we communicate to them.
Now, do you get during that journey, would you find that some customers just don't know how to answer half those questions, therefore market research is required? And if so, how do you recommend clients go about actioning some market research?
Yeah. Definitely that has been my experience. A lot of
Hmm.
those questions can go
Yes.
unanswered. I
Uh-huh.
found that something that works really effectively is instead of just speaking to, say, the marketing person in the organization or even just the founder, it really helps to speak to the entire team. So the salespeople, the customer service people, people that speak to these customers on an everyday basis, they
Hmm.
tend to be able to answer some of these questions a lot better than what the owner or the marketer can.
Okay. Yeah, because they're really in and talking to customers and understand them probably better than, yeah, the marketer that's sitting in the office trying to put a pitch together or some content together. So that makes sense. So that's all well and good if I'm in a business operating selling. What about if I'm starting out? Where do you recommend I start? I've just maybe I'm a tech. I'm building a tech product, trying to solve a problem. Where would you recommend someone like that starting out? Maybe they've got one or two customers and they're just looking to grow their business. What should I do?
Yep. So definitely for the startups, it's not as an extensive process as it is for the enterprise companies.
Hmm. Yes.
I think with the startups, it's really more focused on the pain points. So it doesn't drill down into so much, psychological or
Hmm.
career. It's more, okay, so who in this space or, is there an industry that we need to focus on? And also, what is the main problems that you're solving? And what we find with startups generally, there tends to be more focus around the job role that they do, but also who is the decision maker as well, and do these people influence the decision maker?
Okay. Hmm.
And once you've got those questions answered, it's a good starting phase. You can definitely
Mm.
start, and on a platform like LinkedIn, you
Yes.
can certainly target by industry, by job role, by keyword. Um, Also, depending on the startup, the SaaS startup, it might be a good idea to target people with particular skill sets. Just to give you an example of Hat Media, for example, when we look at leads on LinkedIn, we make sure that they, have the HubSpot certificate as an example. So you could be looking at skills to do with HubSpot.
Oh, interesting. So just looking at
That's
skills, not
just
just
little
job
things
titles.
like that.
Yeah, that's a good tip because
Yeah.
job titles can be a bit all over the place these days. There's all different names for everything and anything. And skill sets could be another direction. So I think
Sometimes they're
that's a good tip.
self-given.
Yeah. Yes. Yeah, I think a lot of
For a
the
lot
time,
of
actually.
startups, they are. We used to work with a wizard,
A wizard, yeah. What was he? A
front
creative
end
wizard.
wizard, or
Yeah.
something
What?
like that.
Yeah. So good luck searching that through LinkedIn. So I think skill set was an interesting point there. So in terms of you've mentioned a little bit about automation and marketing funnels, etc.
Mhm.
Um, in terms of do you think the business should own their own blog, video content? Should it be a cross pollination of content, or is there a particular one they find that works, or is it just industry based or industry specific as well?
Yeah, no, absolutely. It definitely needs to have a variety of different types of content. So,
Hmm.
because when you think about it, different people like to consume content differently. A lot of people like
Yes.
to listen to podcasts just while
Hmm.
they're on the bus on the way to work.
Mm.
Some people love to watch webinars just on in their lunch break.
Hmm.
But then you have the readers who would love to download the ebook or read it on their Kindle late at night. So,
Mm.
it's really you. I recommend having all different types of formats, but what people need to realize, it's really easy to repurpose one bit of content into all three of those categories. So if we're doing a podcast right now, as an example, you could easily transcribe that and turn it into a blog or multiple
Hmm.
blogs. So it's really just about finding the core topic that you want to talk about and then repurposing it into
I think
different formats.
Anthony's stumbled across this. So he's written a few. He's starting to write some more blog articles, Anthony, and then he's creating video snippets from the blog articles, and repurposing
Yeah.
those, and also then
Yeah,
creating PDF sort of imagery flick throughs and going on LinkedIn. And yeah, there's so much you can do once you've actually
and then
created a
working
base of
backwards,
content.
making a large article, breaking that into little social posts, creating
Hmm.
video snippets, like I said, with the transcripts there, and
Yes.
then turning that
Yeah.
into live stream content.
Hmm. that's another option. There's so much options out there once you have a block of content that you're actually working with. So for us, just to give you an indication of what we do. So we build the podcast and we create little video snippets, and out of those, post them individually. So that's another form of content. Transcriptions is another way. We're just posting transcriptions at the moment, but yeah, turning into blog articles could be another means of what we could do within the DevReady podcast itself. So there's always different ways and different means of using content, because it's all knowledge. It's just how you share it.
Absolutely. And I found, I mean, lately I've been using the app called Otter. Not sure if you've heard of it. It's just absolutely brilliant at transcribing everything.
Mm-hmm.
So every
Otter. Okay.
time I go to a meeting, yeah. I also find it's a lot better at taking notes when in a meeting.
Uh-huh.
Just turn it on and just focus on having that conversation instead of trying to write notes down.
Mm-hmm.
There's a lot of software out there that can really help you with, note taking and transcribing and repurposing content. So, yeah, just definitely do a search for Otter, and there's many, many others as well.
Yeah, no, that's a good tip. So, in terms of, let's get a little bit into some more of the technical side of things. So, if
Hmm.
I'm building content and I'm looking to build, just say, a list of people that are interested in what I'm doing, what are some of the recommendations
Hmm.
that you might look at to engage your particular target audience into maybe downloading a piece of content, providing an email for you? What would you recommend doing in terms of a funnel?
Yeah. Um, I'll give you my experience and what I personally do for myself. So
Okay.
I would go on something like LinkedIn Sales Navigator,
Hmm.
and I would automate a lead list to be put together. And LinkedIn's really good at sending you those on a weekly basis. Like, these are the new leads that fit all of the descriptions that you've just mentioned. So once you know who your buyer persona is, you can easily go into that platform and put those in. Once you've got those, I would connect with them on LinkedIn with just a nice personal message.
Hmm.
Um, and then the next step really is just to invite them along to a webinar that I might be hosting, or a podcast, or just a bit of content that I know will definitely add value to their day, or the work challenges that they're having.
Okay.
Um, Having said that, I've recently discovered a software that can automate that entire process, which is called Octopus CRM. Um,
Okay. Yep.
so you can literally take your LinkedIn Sales Navigator lists, put it in a
Yes.
platform like Octopus CRM, and build
Hmm.
a funnel of not just email marketing. We already know tools that do email marketing and
Mm.
automate that.
Hmm.
However, this is actually automating your LinkedIn in mails that you're sending to people, and you can also automate, actions on LinkedIn, like endorsing them for specific skills as well. And
Hmm.
the reason why I love using LinkedIn in mails as a platform and not just emails is because if you look at the average open rate of an email, it sits somewhere between 20 to 25%. Whereas if you
Okay.
compare that to a LinkedIn in-mail, it's actually at 60%. So a lot more people are opening up their social media platform messages, as opposed to their emails.
Mm.
Something about seeing that red
Much higher.
dot notification that they just can't bear to live with. So they'll always open up their social platforms, read the message. And I find that they're a lot more responsive as well through platforms such as
Interesting.
LinkedIn.
Hmm.
You can also use Facebook Messenger as well. You can even build a chatbot around that. So
Hmm.
there's definitely a lot of messages out there that you can automate, and using social platforms, I think, is key if you want a bigger response rate. And really, just as we talked about repurposing content, it's good
Hmm.
to use different touch points as well. So, not just email, but use LinkedIn, use Facebook. There's multiple ways in which you can get in touch with your audience.
And in terms of, are you finding, just say, are you servicing B2B? Would obviously LinkedIn be your best market, clearly, but
Yeah.
are you also repurposing and using Facebooks, for example, to market, or is it just, yeah, let's for B2B, let's just stick to LinkedIn?
It really depends on the client. For a lot of
Uh-huh.
clients, I do actually use Facebook. I find it quite effective. For myself
Mm-hmm.
personally, I just tend to stick to LinkedIn.
Mm-hmm. Okay. So
I
LinkedIn only.
find
Yep.
that Facebook is really good at generating leads, but when you look at the
Mm-hmm.
quality of the leads and you look at, which leads actually converted into customers and then which ones have remained loyal customers over the
Mm-hmm.
years, you find that majority do actually come from LinkedIn.
Okay.
Because
Mm-hmm.
people, when you speak to people on LinkedIn, it's very much a professional relationship and communication, and they almost expect to have those conversations on LinkedIn, whereas Facebook can, I suppose people can get distracted on Facebook, and yeah,
It's
it's
a
really
different
good for
target
lead gen,
audience.
but probably
Yep.
not. Yeah,
Uh-huh.
definitely a different target audience. So it
But
really depends on what industry we're servicing. I mean, we have some clients in the real estate space or property industries,
uh-huh.
and they have software in those spaces, and we find
Mm-hmm.
Facebook is absolutely brilliant for them. But then we have, other clients that do workforce management as an example, and we found
Mm-hmm.
that Facebook didn't, was not very good for them. So it's really just
Mm-hmm.
about experimenting with different channels and finding
Mm-hmm.
where you have the best results. And I think being able to track and measure, from the blog that you put up down
Mm-hmm.
to who has actually converted, what have they read, where did they read it, and just knowing exactly what bits of content, but also which channels have performed best for you.
Mm-hmm.
You can then just become really hyper focused on those effective channels.
It's still advisable to try and put your content across all platforms, just so you can track and monitor it.
Yeah, I wouldn't say all just because there's like hundreds out there.
Yeah.
But
Sorry,
Or
so the top
the
definitely.
key
four
the
or
key
five.
few.
I had one client recently that said, yep, we need to be on Facebook, Twitter, Snapchat, TikTok, YouTube. And I just went, hang on, let's just start with three for now.
Uh-huh.
Um, and yeah, I think definitely don't be on all of them. Just pick the two or three that your target market's definitely there. And you can
Mm-hmm.
definitely repurpose content through all of them. But I do recommend having one primary one that you're focused on, and if you're advertising as well and spending media budgets,
Mm-hmm.
um, that's really when you need to be tracking and measuring which one is the most effective. So
Okay.
And
one primary one and maybe two or three secondary is my recommendation.
okay,
Okay.
get it. Just on that, you mentioned something about advertising there. So in terms of advertising, is that a different conversation, or do we look to advertise the content channels that we're pushing out, or are we just pushing product? What are your recommendations there in terms of advertising on these networks?
Yeah. Um, My strategy usually with advertising is,
Mm-hmm.
if you're on a platform like LinkedIn or Facebook, definitely sponsoring some of the content that you've written.
Mm-hmm.
And then try and get people to a landing page where maybe you can capture an email address, get them to download an ebook just so you can continue nurturing them.
Okay.
And that's really advertising in the top to middle of the funnel. So those people are not ready to buy just yet, but you have identified them as, being qualified potential customers. So really
Mm-hmm.
just making sure that they're reading your content is key with that one. And
Okay.
then with
So in terms,
advertising at the bottom of funnel, you can use something like Google AdWords, because those people are ready to buy. They're searching for those keywords specifically. So you can definitely, those are, I suppose, what we call the quick wins. They're
mm-hmm.
ready to buy, possibly qualified. So advertising on Google just helps you reach them. However, we know that with Google, you're very limited by the number of people that search, and hence you need
Yes.
to expand into platforms such as Facebook and LinkedIn to capture the
Mm-hmm.
ones that possibly need your services but have just not been made aware of you as yet.
Okay, so the content strategy is more for the awareness. So you talked about at the top, that's the awareness section, and then even marketing and advertising, a little bit of that is more for the people that are you're trying to build some awareness around. And then Google's searching for I want X. I need a platform that's going to help me do Y. They're basically just looking to buy right now, which is more competitive as well. But yeah, so
Yeah.
in terms of the content whole strategy, the whole purpose behind that and premise from our understanding is to build your brand in that awareness phase, so when people are ready to buy, they remember you. And I think that's the whole premise of what I get out of it and understand out of it, but love to hear your take on it.
Yeah, we see it as a way to become the expert in the area and be top of mind.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think with advertising as well, keep in mind if you're a startup and you start putting out content
Mm,
and you don't have, a big network of people that follow you on LinkedIn or Facebook,
yes.
it really helps to put advertising behind that bit of content so that,
Uh-huh.
your content writing efforts are not wasted. You make sure that all the right people see it, and the reach that you get is highly targeted to exactly the people that you want. And with advertising you can choose exactly who sees that message. So
Hmm.
it's a really good way to grow and scale, and you definitely don't need a large budget to get started.
Uh-huh. What sort of budget would you recommend someone that's starting out to really put aside for a monthly spend on advertising, just to build some awareness around what they're doing and what they're putting together from
Yeah,
a content and even product perspective?
yeah, I recommend $1,000 a month.
Okay. What does
Yeah.
$1,000 a month get you in terms of advertising on average, really?
um Okay, I'll give you exact statistics from my last webinar campaign that I ran. So,
Okay.
um, what I ended up with for $1,000 a month just through LinkedIn, and I was
Hmm.
using sponsored in-mails, as well as sponsored posts that were
Okay.
driving people to a landing page where they can register for a webinar.
Hmm.
That webinar ended up receiving 85 contacts,
Uh-huh.
which are now sitting in my HubSpot platform that we can nurture
Yes.
and
Hmm.
invite to all future webinars that we host. Um, Usually with webinars, we find that there's a 50% attendance rate. So we ended up
Okay.
getting 30 people show up on the day. Um, and then so far we've spoken, I had, sales qualified conversations with three of them. So for $1,000, I think that's been really good results.
Yeah, so it's three
And I
leads
think
from
most people
for.
can expect to have the same type of results, so long as
Hmm.
you're inviting them to something that's of value to them rather
Mm.
than trying to sell to them. So if you're
Hmm.
inviting them to a webinar, you can definitely expect really good results. And then obviously the key after the webinar is just to continue nurturing them and having
Uh-huh.
conversations that are valuable to them.
And that's that whole through HubSpot nurturing. Now, in terms of the way you nurture your people, that now you've got 85 people in HubSpot, what actions do you
Mm.
take? Do you funnel them up through just a generic funnel? Do you manage them in a way where if they like something, they go into a different route? How do you approach that end of, or that top end, really?
Yeah. I mean, what we could do is segment them by industry. So they each get a different type of marketing funnel that they are exposed to.
Okay.
And
Hmm.
really, the first few emails are all about just sharing more content that we've done with them. So we say, thank
Hmm.
you for attending the webinar. We hope you enjoyed it. We thought you might also enjoy, the webinar that we did a while back, or the ebook that we've written on this topic specific to your industry, or
Hmm.
your job role. So it's really just about segmenting them and then figuring out what bits of content do we already have that we can share with them that we know will add value to their day.
Okay.
Um, and then as we see that they're opening up these emails, perhaps clicking on some of the links as well,
Hmm.
you can then push them down to the bottom of the funnel and offer them something like, a free strategy call.
Hmm.
Or, if you're in the SaaS industry, this is really where you want to offer your free demo.
Yes, free
And
demo,
just
free
that's really
access
when you
for a
want
bit.
to start
Mhm.
explaining, yeah, the features of your software and what it can do and how it can help you.
Okay, so that's when you get into when they're starting to engage with your brand and your content a little bit more, then you might start pushing or sharing your product and there's value and benefit to them rather than
Yeah, there's
right from the
no hard sell up
mm,
front.
hmm
Like people see that I
Yeah.
see on LinkedIn and other social networks, they say you wouldn't ask someone to marry them the first time you meet them.
That's a really funny example. I used that in my last marketing automation event. I said
I like it.
it was actually around collecting data because when
Uh-huh.
some companies, when they try and give you an ebook, they'll take you to a landing page and the form has about, 7 questions on it. And instantly the customer is put off by filling out this form. They don't want the ebook anymore. So my suggestion is think of it like dating. If you go on your first date, you're not going to start asking this person, what's your mother's maiden name and what's your date of birth? Just
Well, how many
questions
kids
like
would you
that
like to
that,
have?
exactly.
Yes.
It can't be too pushy.
No, I think, and I shared a post that actually a conversation. I think that's from podcast with Stuart. Stuart, yeah, it was the other day where through the podcast he talked about the exact same thing, in terms of there has to be some value given, and if you ask people um, 15, 20 different questions before you give them some value, they're probably gonna. It's a massive barrier to entry. So yeah, just be open
Mm.
to the fact of if you're giving away some value, an email is more than sufficient for them to give away. Yeah, so I think that's an important point, really.
Yeah, and just trust the process, really. Trust that they will, remember your brand, remember
Hmm.
the bit of content that they consumed from you, and
Yes.
really just be patient because, in my experience, a lot of them, maybe they haven't. Responded to some of the emails straight after the webinar, but a lot of them have actually ended up calling me 2 or 3 months later and saying,
Hmm.
"Oh, I watched your webinar or I attended your event, and it just turns out that now I have a project that I need to work on, so I thought of
Hmm.
you."
Mm. Yeah, I think we and that's the awareness phase. Not everyone's ready to buy. Clearly, I think it's on average it's
Yeah.
3% of people that are ready to buy your service, from what I've read. The rest are all more awareness, education phase. So they might see your webinar, they might perk some interest in that because they've thought about for in your world, we need to do some additional marketing, but and maybe build some content funnels, etc. But in reality, I mean, just not ready for that right now. And yeah, like you said, that might come back to you in 2 or 3 months. So I think trust the
Yeah,
process is a really good point
Yeah.
there. Yeah,
the timing needs to be right, and that's
Yeah.
the
correct.
whole point of that marketing strategy is to be top of mind. So when it is right, you're remembered.
Mm,
Exactly. And if you consider the B2B industry as well, and the reason why it takes anywhere between 6 to 24 months is more than likely these companies already have contracts with an existing supplier at which they need to kind of have finished. And only then can they invite, other vendors to come and pitch for the job or so it's really a lot of internal issues and processes that you can't control. Even if they love you and they want to work with you, that stands in the way. So yeah, just trust the process and be patient and keep doing content. It will definitely pay off.
yeah, so I think the key takeaway from today's conversation is right content. First and foremost, understand your niche clearly, because otherwise you're writing content that's not servicing the right people, and continue to produce that content. What sort of you mentioned a few different things about repurposing. What have you found has
Mhm.
been the best way to repurpose content? So you're obviously doing webinars, which is audio visual content. What from that perspective are you repurposing those through to blogs as well? Is that generally where you start?
Yeah, absolutely. So with the webinars, I can
Hmm.
transcribe them and turn them into
Yep.
mini blogs. But what
Hmm.
I've found most effective is, yeah, I'll take a 1 hour webinar
Uh-huh.
and I'll take key points from it, like no more than 2 to 3 minute talking points, and I'll
Hmm.
actually repurpose it as just content for my LinkedIn posting. Which has created a lot of conversations. Actually, it's created a lot of conversations around appearing on other webinars and guest starring
Yes.
on podcasts,
Uh-huh.
because people can see that you know I'm sharing lots of that type of content. So
Mm.
and something we definitely one of the services that we offer to clients is webinar marketing. So something we promise to do for them is, once you're done with your 1 hour, we turn that 1 hour into say 7 or 8 2 to 3 minute snippets that you can then repurpose on your social platforms
Hmm.
and then use those to invite them to a landing page where they can download the entire webinar if they wish to, or
Yes.
any
Hmm.
kind of further assets that they might be interested in.
Yeah, interesting. And it's just a smart way to just continue to repurpose. So, um, And yes, you've been invited on this podcast due to content sharing and network and working on LinkedIn. So it's interesting the way it all goes around. And I think the more, what I've noticed is the more you actually do share, the more people are communicating and wanting you to share. So that's one thing I have noticed. So if you're going to be writing and publicizing different types of content, expect that people will approach you. I was on a podcast myself the other day, which was with Singularity U Australia, just sharing a little bit about my particular story. So it's interesting when you start sharing more and engaging with people
Mhm.
more in a sharing mindset and even a collaborative mindset. So a webinar um, could be a way that you could not just pitch and sell your product, but maybe do panel type stuff. I'm not sure how you approach it, where you might bring in different people and different aspects and thinking within a webinar as well. So just collaborative content is really a nice place to build content as well.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, just on that, every webinar that I've done, I've had a guest on it. I
Hmm.
can't stand the thought of just me talking on a webinar. I love
Yeah.
having guests and,
Uh-huh.
other people that I consider experts in their field to appear.
Yes.
You mentioned
Hmm.
Stuart Marshall. He was actually on my
Yes.
very first webinar.
Uh-huh.
And the webinar was about selling SaaS. So I
Yes.
approached it from a marketing point of view. And I
Hmm.
thought it'd be really good to have a software expert on this
Mm.
webinar just to talk about, the other side of things, the technical
Mm.
side of things. And
Hmm.
there was quite a lot of insights that came from him on that. Um, just while we're talking about repurposing as well, I mean, as you know, a lot of people they have very short attention spans in this day and age. So sharing a massive 1 hour webinar with them, very likely they probably won't want to watch it. But if you share little tiny snippets of content, they will watch it.
Mm.
So really, doing a 1 hour webinar actually gives you content for an entire month to reuse and repurpose.
And then it helps you get onto the other platforms.
Correct, it does, and just expand your content more out. And I think people don't realize until they start doing this sort of long form content what you can actually do. Great
Hmm.
example. And I think you said, yeah, like a month, and a month might be 6, 7, 8 snippets that come out of that, one a week, two a week, and all of a sudden you're
Yeah.
posting out educational content to your target market that will add value and continue to build that awareness around your brand. So, yeah, very good point on the long form content.
Thank you.
So, clearly, you're a content marketer. It's all about content for you. We've mentioned get to know step one, understand your niche, understand your customers, look at some buyer personas, make sure you're clear on who your users are, who your potential clients are, what social media platforms they might be engaging with. If that's like, for example, B2B, LinkedIn is clearly an area. If you're B2C, Facebook might be an area for you, or Instagram. It really depends on the type of product that you're selling and who your customers are. From there, you've talked about building long form content and different types of content. So everyone's different. I think that's an important point here. I like to watch video and listen to content. So, but I'd say a lot of people out there also like to read. And so taking different forms of content and producing different medium is important as well.
I
And then
prefer to
build
read the stuff.
yeah, I think you're more of a reader. So yeah, we're all very different. So the other thing would then go into a little bit about marketing funnels. So once I get someone into downloading an ebook, for example, or a webinar, and they provide an email, how do I strategize that? So is it still focused? You mentioned it's focusing still on education. Like no one wants to get an email every 5 minutes from a company, but how many is too
No.
many? What's some stats and some averages people can focus on if they're going to build an email marketing funnel and the value they should be adding through that process?
Yeah, absolutely. So bang on, it still needs to be educational. You still need
Hmm.
to be adding value and just
Yes.
trust the process because if they see you as a thought leader or a key person of influence in your
Hmm.
industry as a result of this content, they will
Yes.
reach out to you. And that's what we call inbound marketing. You don't have to
Yes.
sell, you just have to um, share knowledge and expertise on topics that they're interested in.
Hmm.
In terms of frequency, I normally recommend weekly for the first 4 weeks, and then turning that into fortnightly to monthly. And
Okay.
monthly could be just your monthly newsletter where you talk
Hmm.
about, company culture,
Yes.
new products that might be coming out,
Hmm.
something that's trending in the space as well. But what I also recommend is don't just focus on promoting the company or the brand, because people are social beings and they love connecting with other people. They don't want to connect with a brand, they want to connect with a person. So if you
Mm.
have someone in your industry or in your company that can be that face of the company,
Hmm.
get them to connect with them on LinkedIn and just reach out with personalized messages and personalized content, and you'll get a much higher result. I mean,
Mm.
that's exactly what we did for Lenovo. We got the
Okay.
sales teams to be the authors of these articles and then
Hmm.
personally reach out.
Mm.
Myself as well, I don't do too much social posting from Hat Media. I actually do everything from Joanna. So
Yes.
really just having that person in the company that can be the key person, that people can respond to and resonate with and have a
Hmm.
relationship with, that's what really helps.
Now, in that on that context there, within your, I think within your email component, um, I've I've read a little bit about creating more personalized email campaigns. How do you approach your email campaigns? You mentioned newsletters there, but if I'm educating um, customers on that journey, do we keep it more like a blog post? What do we do within our emails, or what
Yep.
could we do?
So, firstly, before you go and create content for your emails,
Hmm.
the most important thing you need to do is segment your databases and try and find key fields that you can segment. So, do you segment by job title? Do you segment by industry? Really depends on what kind of content you already have. And then really, if you've written a new blog, then sending that out to them via email is great, or
Hmm.
getting them to subscribe to your newsletters or blogs as well if they haven't already done so.
Okay.
um, if you're in the SaaS space as well, it really helps to, yeah, educational content around, what are their biggest pain points.
Hmm.
um, Also, one thing I talk about a lot is creating a marketing automation workflow for existing customers, because everybody focuses on the leads and trying to convert them. And for them, it's really just sharing more and more educational content. But when it comes to your customers, you can kind of be a little bit more promotional there because they've already
Hmm.
purchased from you and they've already experienced your software. So if you can connect the way they behave within your software and you can segment that, it's really then really easy to upsell them or cross sell them on extra features that you see they might need.
Hmm.
But also sending out emails to them about, if you refer us to other customers, if you've had a good experience, we can help you. We can definitely give you some incentive for that. And it's really, a lot of clients don't really focus on email marketing for their existing customers. They focus on it for their leads. So we definitely do a strategy around both your leads and your customers, and you end up getting quite a few quick wins from your customers because they already love you. And they really just need to be made aware of the extra features that they could use, or the fact that they can tell their friends about it.
I think that's a really good point. And yeah, like you said, when we look at marketing, we look at generally focusing on our leads, but are we marketing to our current customers? And yeah, if you do have a customer base there, they're untapped water, and it is always easier to sell to your current customers because they know who you are, they trust you, you've added value in the past, and you don't have to go through that awareness of brand and education and can I trust this person or business that are, if you're doing a good job, that already exists.
Yep, exactly.
So, Joanne, is there anything else you'd like to add around marketing? I think we've covered quite a bit here today in terms of what content marketing is, how to approach it, how to structure. Is there anything other points that people should know?
I think Yeah, I think we've covered all the main points. I mean, if I could just summarize some of
Hmm.
the things, like with niching, a lot of people are scared that they're going to miss out on all these opportunities. But really, niching is what helps you scale. And if just consider some of the top tech companies of today started out with a niche. So PayPal, as you know, started out with eBay users, and Amazon started out with books, and Facebook
Hmm.
started out with Ivy League colleges. So don't be scared to niche. Also, once you have, just focus on making your message very customer centric, focus on internal pain points, focus on solving their pain points as opposed to, what features do you have. And
Hmm.
then obviously just sharing more and more content and learning more about, the type of content that they'd like to consume and how they can consume it, saving yourself a lot of time by repurposing your content. Um,
Yes.
and yeah, don't forget your existing customers. That's really some massive quick wins, that are really good opportunities there that a lot of companies don't focus on.
Perfect, Joanna. And I think that sums up the conversation today. So I really appreciate you joining us on the DevReady podcast, just helping people here that are non-techs building tech, but need to understand marketing and how they can potentially market their products out to the
And
marketplace.
something
And
that's critical right now, hopefully for a few businesses out there.
yeah, so it is. We are recording this through lockdown, through obviously the coronavirus spread, and it's a challenging time for everyone out there. It's been a shift in thinking. We're all working, well, most of us are working from home. Some of us, unfortunately, aren't working at all. So it is a challenging time, but it's also could be a great time for people to reset, rethink, and rejig, and maybe work on things on what are my niche, what is my niche, what are my buyer personas, and maybe starting to build a strategy or even rethinking your strategy around marketing. A lot of people now are on the web more, they are communicating more through technology. I'm finding a lot more people are on LinkedIn. So if that is your target market, I think, yeah, it's a good time to actually reset and rethink about it as well.
Yeah, just on that, actually, I recently put up a post on LinkedIn because of
Uh-huh.
the COVID-19 situation.
Yes.
Something we've noticed is, if you look at the term webinars in Google
Uh-huh.
Trends,
Mhm.
I mean, just in the last 24 hours, they've had over 10,000 searches for the word webinars.
Oh,
And if
wow.
you look at Google Trends, back in December or even January of this year, it
Hmm.
had a score of 5 out of 100, which is extremely low, which
Yes.
means it wasn't a very popular search at all. Whereas if you look at it right now, it's
Hmm.
100 out of 100, which is the
Okay.
maximum you could
Well,
possibly have.
That's a bit of a
So
change. Yes.
yeah, absolutely. So I've been saying like now is the perfect time to
Uh-huh.
do webinars.
Yes.
And one
hmm
thing I mentioned as well is just my experience. We've been doing quite a few webinars for ourselves and
Hmm.
for clients, and I've noticed
Yes.
that the attendance rate is a lot higher when you do them at night time, like
Interesting.
7:30,
Hmm.
8 o'clock, slightly after
Hmm.
dinner. And I think the
Hmm.
reason for that is during the day, a lot of people are having to homeschool their children right now. So
Yes.
it's definitely challenging finding that time to watch a
Mm.
webinar. Whereas at night, they're very much happy to escape into their computer and consume content. So
Hmm.
if you're thinking about webinars and, COVID-19 has made you postpone it, definitely rethink that strategy.
Hmm.
Definitely try and do a webinar nonetheless, and do it at nighttime would be my suggestion.
Oh, perfect. Thanks,
okay.
Joanna. In terms of just one more question on webinars, how engaging do you find people within a webinar are? Do you find you get questions or just
Yeah.
a conversation generally? Are they engaging from that perspective?
Absolutely. If you consider ebook versus webinar, with
Yes.
ebooks, you have no idea how much the person has actually read, or even if they've
Mm.
read it at all. And we've sometimes
Correct.
called people after ebook
Uh-huh.
downloads and they've gone, oh, well, sorry, I haven't actually read it yet. Whereas with
Uh-huh.
webinars, you know exactly who's attended, you know all of the content that they've consumed. But also, if you're using a feature like Zoom, you have really cool features that you can use, such as
Hmm.
polls and Q&A and chat box. So as long as you utilizing those features, you can see exactly who's engaging with
Mm.
them. And I find that they do make webinars a lot more interactive and engaging. So definitely run a webinar. If it's your first time, have a look at some webinars from from Zoom themselves or from
Yes.
On24 or WebEx or whoever you want to use, because
Hmm.
they do a really good job at showing you how to use some of those features. And it certainly helps you be more engaged with your audience. So you're not just talking at them through a screen, you're actually, answering some of their questions as well.
Hmm. Yeah, because you want it to be
Sure.
engaging. So I think that's some good tips to wrap up there. So, Joanna Inch, thank you for joining us. I think that's been quite insightful. Some people that are looking to build some a content and a marketing strategy behind their technology, SaaS business, whatever it might be. So, really appreciate you coming on and sharing your learnings over the past 15 years within marketing and what you're doing currently in the space. And it's always an evolving space. So I imagine you're always learning as
Absolutely.
to what works and what doesn't. So if anyone wants to reach out to you, Joanna Inch will share obviously the podcast via LinkedIn. So we'll share out her details via there. Hat Media as just hatmedia.com.au. Is that
Yeah,
correct?
yeah, that's right. And but also, best way is just to find me on LinkedIn and
Hmm.
say hello.
Yep. And
Easy.
we'll mention you in the comments once it goes out.
Yep. Thank you. And this is being recorded on Good Friday. So have a quiet little Easter and hopefully enjoy
Thank you.
your
You
2 and 5-year-old
too.
running around. I'm sure you have a lot of fun in the backyard at
And
least.
yeah, stay safe as well. And
Yeah.
thank
Well,
you. Thank you.